Palantir.
The core mission of our company always was to make the West, especially America, the strongest in the world.
China seized.
Vladimir Putin tells the U.S.
an North Korean nuclear attack could be.
Tensions between the U.S. and Iran are
near Taiwan as tensions escalate.
In just 5 years, Palantir has gone from a secretive $15 billion defense contractor to one of the hottest growth stocks on the planet, valued at almost $400 billion. To the public, it's a mysterious speculative AI company. To governments, it's a mission-critical contractor embedded in the machinery of war, law enforcement, and finance. Born in the paranoia of the post-9/11 era, Palantir was seeded with CIA money, built for counterterrorism, and later sold to Wall Street and the Fortune 500. It says it doesn't sell software, but it has quietly become the operating system for decision-making in places where failure simply isn't an option. This is the blueprint of how data became a weapon, and how a company built for the shadows became a $370 billion empire. Palantir's story starts with PayPal. When eBay bought it in 2002, co-founder Peter Thiel walked away with cash and a single obsession: pattern recognition. At PayPal, his fraud team had built tools to spot suspicious money flows. Thiel thought, if that same tech could track terrorists instead of scammers, it could change the world. He pulled in Alex Karp, a Stanford philosophy PhD who'd never run a company, plus engineer Nathan Gettings, Stanford grad Joe Lonsdale, and Stephen Cohen, a 20-year-old coding prodigy. The name came from writer John Tolkien. The Palantir were crystal orbs that could see across vast distances. For Thiel, it was the perfect metaphor: software that could see the hidden connections inside massive datasets. Funding arrived from the right place. In 2005, In-Q-Tel, the CIA's venture arm, invested alongside Thiel's founders fund. Early rounds totaled about $30 million. From the start, Palantir avoided the Silicon Valley playbook. No press blitz, no public demos. You saw the product only after signing an NDA and stepping into a secure Palo Alto office. That product was Gotham. Launched in 2005, it let analysts stitch together data from wiretaps, bank records, travel manifests, surfacing patterns that might flag a terrorist cell or a money laundering ring. By 2008, Gotham wasn't theory anymore. Reports credit it with helping uncover a terrorist plot in Afghanistan and aiding investigators in unspooling Bernie Madoff's Ponzi scheme. Palantir had found its formula: deep integration with the most sensitive institutions on Earth and the ability to make itself indispensable to them. Once Palantir proved Gotham could work, the CIA opened the door. From Langley, contracts spread across the US intelligence network: NSA, FBI, Special Forces, and Homeland Security. By 2010, Gotham was embedded in counterterrorism operations from Afghanistan to New York. The US Army used it to map roadside bomb networks. Homeland Security leaned on it for drug trafficking interdictions and disaster response. The money moved fast. Bookings went from tens of millions in 2008 to over $1.1 billion in 2020. Much of it from long-term government deals that few competitors could touch. But Palantir didn't want to be seen only as a spies tool. So they built Foundry, Gotham's commercial twin, with the same core advantage: ingest chaotic data, spit out a clean, navigable map of what's really happening. JP Morgan used Foundry for fraud detection, Airbus for supply chain optimization, Merck for clinical trial tracking, oil and gas majors for predicting equipment failures. The strategy worked both ways. Government wins gave Palantir credibility and cash flow. Corporate clients gave it a growth narrative that played well with investors. By the mid-2010s, Palantir wasn't just in the war rooms of Washington. It was in the boardrooms of the Fortune 500. Each side fed the other. Defense contracts hardened the tech. Commercial contracts expanded the margins. It had quietly become the operating system for high-security organizations. By the mid-2010s, Palantir had mastered something rare in tech. It was a unicorn that thrived in the shadows. With no public earnings reports and no mainstream product demos, its value was set by whispers and closed-door trades. In private secondary markets, Palantir's valuation climbed past $15 billion by 2015, even though only a small circle of insiders truly knew the numbers. The mystique was deliberate. Palantir was already entrenched in the US intelligence community, winning contracts others couldn't even bid on. Investors saw a company that had embedded itself where the stakes were life and death and assumed that moat was priceless. For Peter Thiel, it became the crown jewel of his portfolio. By 2020, the pressure to go public was undeniable. The data economy was exploding, and Palantir's story, half national security backbone, half enterprise disruptor, was too compelling to stay private. But instead of a traditional IPO, Palantir chose a direct listing. On September 30, 2020, its shares opened on the NYSE at $10. What followed was a meteoric run. Within a year, the stock hit $45, briefly pushing the market cap over $40 billion. But that was just the start. Fueled by a wave of AI-driven hype and a flood of government and commercial contracts, Palantir became one of the decade's most explosive growth stocks. Over the next 5 years, the shares climbed more than 1,600%, and by mid-2025, the company's valuation hovered around $370 billion, a staggering leap that made it one of the largest and most closely watched players in tech. In just the past year alone, the stock surged over 400%, putting it in a class of its own among growth companies. The catalyst was not just new deals, but the perception that Palantir had cracked the code on marrying artificial intelligence with the most sensitive government missions. And yet, as Wall Street bid the company into the stratosphere, the debate over its fundamentals and its role in society was only intensifying. By the time Palantir's market cap crossed into the hundreds of billions, its reputation was as polarizing as it was powerful. To some, it was Silicon Valley's secret weapon, the company that turned oceans of raw data into actionable intelligence for the CIA, the Pentagon, and Fortune 500 giants. To others, it was an overvalued black box, a surveillance vendor riding the AI wave without proving it could deliver sustainable, broad-based growth. The numbers fed both narratives. Revenue grew from $1.1 billion in 2020 to roughly $2.5 billion in 2024, with contracts stretching from the US Army to the French Health Ministry. The Air Force alone signed a $900 million deal in early 2025 to expand Palantir's role in mission planning and logistics. But while Palantir's adjusted numbers looked better, by official accounting standards, it was still losing money. Heavy spending on R&D, stock-based compensation, and sales kept operating margins under pressure. Transparency was another dividing line. Palantir rarely named its biggest customers, citing confidentiality, and many of its highest value contracts were locked behind government secrecy. Critics called it a smokescreen. Supporters called it a moat, proof that Palantir was doing work too critical to disclose. And then there was the politics. In the US, congressional hearings questioned the scope of Palantir's surveillance capabilities. In Europe, new privacy laws forced the company to adjust how it handled sensitive data. Privacy advocates argued that Palantir was embedding itself so deeply into the state that removing it would be nearly impossible. CEO Alex Karp countered that this was the point. Palantir wasn't building apps to be swapped out every quarter. It was building infrastructure designed to last decades. The split in perception was stark. Bears argued the valuation was impossible to justify. Bulls said the market was finally waking up to the scale of Palantir's opportunity. And in that tension between fear of overreach and faith in indispensability, Palantir's mystique only grew. If you measure power by headcount, Palantir looks like a minnow. In mid-2025, it employed just 3,500 people. Compare that to Microsoft at over 220,000, IBM at 280,000, or even Snowflake, a direct competitor, at around 6,000. And yet, Palantir's 2024 revenue of roughly $2.5 billion works out to more than $710,000 per employee, nearly double Salesforce's output per head, and well above Oracle's. Palantir software is never plug and play. Every deployment is a high-touch integration, tens of millions in upfront fees followed by recurring licensing revenue that locks customers in. Once Gotham or Foundry runs a government's intelligence workflow or a multinational supply chain, ripping it out would be like amputating a limb. That stickiness means small, specialized teams can manage sprawling accounts. A handful of engineers can simultaneously support the US Army, a European health agency, and a global energy company because the platform scales far beyond the size of the teams maintaining it. Inside the company, the culture is flat and mission-focused. Engineers embed with clients instead of shipping updates from a distance. Many hires come from academia, defense, or intelligence, people used to high-stakes environments and long-term commitments. The result is a paradox. One of the most valuable tech companies on the planet is operated by what amounts to a battalion, not an army. But that leanness cuts both ways. Lose too many of those embedded specialists, and the very relationships that fuel Palantir's growth could fracture overnight. The question hanging over Palantir now isn't where it's been. It's how far it can push from here. Alex Karp, with his unruly hair and philosopher's cadence, has pivoted the company towards artificial intelligence. In 2023, Palantir launched its artificial intelligence platform, AIP, large language models built for the highest security environments on Earth. The Pentagon is testing it for mission planning. Fortune 500 companies are using it for supply chain forecasting, fraud detection, and even pandemic response. The results have been staggering. In 2024, Palantir became the sole builder of the US Army's Maven Smart System, a $480 million AI kill chain platform that scans drones, satellite, and sensor feeds to identify and track targets in seconds, connecting them directly to the weapons that can take them out. It's a role no other tech company holds, placing Palantir at the very center of the Pentagon's next-generation warfighting network. In late 2023, Palantir won the largest IT contract in NHS England's history, a £330 million deal handing a former CIA-backed defense contractor control over the healthcare data of 68 million UK citizens. New partnerships with Microsoft Azure and AWS have embedded Palantir deeper into the cloud infrastructure that runs both government and commerce. And yet, the risks are as big as the opportunities. Competition from Snowflake, Splunk, and the cloud giants is fierce. Regulators in Washington and Brussels are watching more closely than ever. The more Palantir embeds itself in the decision-making core of democratic institutions, the louder the questions get about oversight and control. That's what makes Palantir's story so striking. It's not just another software company riding the AI wave. It's the playbook for building unshakable influence in the 21st century. Start in the shadows, win trust where mistakes are buried under classification, turn those wins into commercial contracts, and then build products so embedded that removal feels impossible. Gotham, Foundry, and now AIP. Each one more integrated into its client's nervous system than the last. That's the real moat, and it's why the $370 billion valuation isn't just hype. The paradox? The more indispensable Palantir becomes, the harder it is to regulate, replace, or even fully understand. The company sells visibility to its clients, while keeping the full scope of its own reach almost entirely invisible. From a $30 million CIA seed check to controlling the decision-making architecture of governments and corporations worldwide, Palantir is proof that in the information age, the ultimate product isn't software, it's influence. This is Bedlam Bear. Subscribe for more hidden stories of power and profit.